Most Wanted Corporate Human Rights Violators, Alums. Introduction. Since 2001, Global Exchange has compiled a list of some of the worst corporations based on human rights violations. Below are the alums or past corporations whose actions have qualified them for our list. Caterpillar. CEO. James Owens. Contact the corporation. Caterpillar Incorporated. 100 Adams, St. Peoria. IL 61629. Phone, 309-675-1000. Fax, 309-675-1182. Caterpillar Incorporated. Caterpillar Incorporated. Human rights abuses. Contracting with known violators of human rights, enabling house demolition, supplying equipment that kills Palestinian civilians and American peace activists. For years, the Caterpillar Company has provided Israel with the bulldozers used to destroy Palestinian homes. Despite worldwide condemnation, Caterpillar has refused to end their corporate participation house demolition by cutting off sales of specially modified D9 and D10 bulldozers to the Israeli military. Israel seeks to portray the destruction of homes as necessary to its self-defense, but nothing could be further from the truth. As the Israeli Committee Against Home Demolitions has rigorously documented, house destruction is part of Israel's intention to turn the annexation of East Jerusalem and other occupied areas into a concrete fact. In a letter to Caterpillar CEO James Owens, the Office of the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights said, allowing the delivery of your bulldozers to the Israeli army, in the certain knowledge that they are being used for such action, might involve complicity or acceptance on the part of your company to actual and potential violations of human rights. Peace activist Rachel Corrie was killed by a Caterpillar D9 military bulldozer in 2003. She was run over while attempting to block the destruction of family's home in Gaza. Her family filed suit against Caterpillar in March 2005, charging that Caterpillar knowingly sold machines used to violate human rights. Since Rachel's death, at least 3 more Palestinians have been killed in their homes by Israeli bulldozer demolitions. Caterpillar Incorporated. Corporate human rights violator, Coca-Cola. CEO. E. Neville is Dell. Contact the corporation. Phone, 404-676-2121. Coca-Cola. Human rights abuses, violent killings, kidnapping, torture, water privatization, health violations, and discriminatory practices. Coca-Cola Company is perhaps the most widely recognized corporate symbol on the planet. The company also leads in the abuse of workers' rights, assassinations, water privatization, and worker discrimination. Between 1989 and 2002, 8 union leaders from Coca-Cola bottling plants in Colombia were killed after protesting the company's labor practices. Hundreds of other Coca-Cola workers who have joined or considered joining the Colombian union SINALTRAINAL have been kidnapped, tortured, and detained by paramilitaries who intimidate workers to prevent them from unionizing. In Turkey, 14 Coca-Cola truck drivers and their families were beaten severely by Turkish police hired by the company, while protesting a layoff of 1,000 workers from a local bottling plant in 2005. In India, Coca-Cola destroys local agriculture by privatizing the country's water resources. In Platimata, Kerala, Coca-Cola extracted 1.5 million liters of deep well water, which they bottled and sold under the names Bizani and Bon Aqua. The groundwater was severely depleted, affecting thousands of communities with water shortages and destroying agricultural activity. As a result, the remaining water became contaminated with high chloride and bacteria levels, leading to scabs, eye problems, and stomach aches in the local population. Water shortages have occurred in Varanasi, Thane, and Tamil Nadu as well. The company is also guilty of reselling its plant's industrial waste to farmers as fertilizers, despite it containing hazardous lead and cadmium. Coca-Cola is one of the most discriminatory employers in the world. In the year 2000, African-American employees in the U.S. sued the company for race-based disparities in pay and promotions. In Mexico, Coca-Cola FEMSA, the largest Coca-Cola bottler in Latin America, fired a senior bottling manager for being gay. Finally, by regularly denying health insurance to employees and their families, Coca-Cola has failed to help stop the spread of AIDS in Africa. The company is one of the continent's largest private employers, yet only partially covers expensive medicines, while not covering generic medicines at all. Coca-Cola. Dow Chemical. CEO. Andrew M. Liver is. Contact the corporation. Dow Chemical Company 2030 Dow Center Midland, Me 48674. Dow Chemical. Human rights abuses, creation of chemical weapons, marketing poisonous chemicals, illegal dumping of toxins into populated areas, environmental destruction, health problems, death. Dow Chemical has been destroying lives and poisoning the planet for decades. The company is best known for the ravages and health disaster for millions of Vietnamese and U.S. veterans caused by its lethal Vietnam War defoliant, Agent Orange. Dow's invent first, ask questions later standard of business led the multinational company to develop and perfect napalm, a brutal chemical weapon that burned many innocents to death in Vietnam and other wars. In 1988, Dow provided pesticides to Saddam Hussein despite warnings that they could be used to produce chemical weapons. In 2001, Dow inherited the toxic legacy of the worst peacetime chemical disaster in history when it acquired Union Carbide Corporation, UCC, and its outstanding liabilities in Bhopal, India. As the Students for Bhopal website recounts, on December 3, 1984, thousands of people in Bhopal, India were gassed to death after a catastrophic chemical leak at a UCC pesticide plant. More than 150,000 people were left severely disabled, of whom 22,000 have since died of their injuries since the disaster, now widely acknowledged as the world's worst ever. Dow refuses to address its liabilities in Bhopal or even admit its existence, continuing in Union Carbide's tradition of profiting from extreme corporate irresponsibility. In India, Dow's subsidiary faces manslaughter charges and is considered a fugitive from justice for a pending criminal case related to the 1984 ex-Hemical explosion. Dow and UCC's lack of accountability in the disaster continue to affect the lives in Bhopal to this day. Worldwide, Dow is involved in human rights abuses, environmental destruction, water and ground contamination, health violations, chemical poisoning, and chemical warfare. Dow Chemical's impact is felt globally from their Midland, Michigan headquarters to New Plymouth, New Zealand. In Midland, Dow has been producing chlorinated chemicals and burning and burying its waste, including chemicals that make up Agent Orange. In New Plymouth, New Zealand, 500,000 gallons of Agent Orange were produced and thousands of tons of BOX-laced waste was dumped in agricultural fields. Dow's toxic legacies of human rights abuses traversed to agricultural fields in Central America, where Dow exported EPA-banned pesticide DBCP for use on banana and pineapple crops. As a result, thousands of banana workers were exposed to DBCP and became sterile. In retail markets across the world, Dow's dangerous chemicals are present as common household solvents, plastics, paints, and pharmaceuticals. Private security contractors.
DIN Corporation, CDSC.
2100 East Grand Avenue, El Segundo. Phone, 310-615-0311. Human rights abuses, causing health problems, environmental devastation and death, endangering lives, physically abusing individuals, sex trafficking. Private security contractors have become the fastest growing sector of the global economy during the last decade, $100 billion a year, nearly unregulated industry. DIN Corporation, one of the providers of these mercenary services, demonstrates the industry's power and potential to abuse human rights, while guarding Afghani statesmen and African oil fields, training Iraqi police forces, eradicating Colombian cocoa plants, and protecting business interests in hurricane-devastated New Orleans. These hired guns bolster the security of governments and organizations at the expense of many people's human rights. DIN Corp fumigation of cocoa crops along the Colombian-Ecuadorian border led Ecuadorian peasants to sue DIN Corporation in 2001. Plaintiffs argued that DIN Corporation knew or should have known that the herbicides were highly toxic and should therefore be held accountable for health problems and death among local people and widespread environmental damage to their subsistence agriculture. A Colombian news weekly called DIN Corporation, which also sprays herbicides in Peru and Bolivia, lawless Rambos. DIN Corp's questionable actions in Haiti include its training of the national police force after the first coup against President Aristide, paving the way for Tonton Macoutes to return to power. In 2001, a mechanic with DIN Corporation blew the whistle on DIN Corporation employees in Bosnia for rape and trading girls as young as 12 into sex slavery. According to a lawsuit filed by the mechanic, employees and supervisors were engaging in perverse, illegal and inhumane behavior and were purchasing illegal weapons, women, and forged passports. The mechanic observed DIN Corporation employees buying and selling women and bragging about the ages and talents of their female slaves. DIN Corporation fired the whistleblower, who later claimed that DIN Corporation is just as immoral and elite as possible, and any rule they can break they do. The company transferred the employees accused of sex trading out of the country, eventually firing some. None were prosecuted. Corporate human rights violator. Ford Motor Company. CEO, William Clay Ford, Jr. Human rights violations, environmental degradation, climate change, fueling wars for oil. The U.S. automobile industry is fueling America's addiction to oil. Automobiles are the single largest consumer of oil in the U.S., a country that constitutes less than 5% of the world's population but consumes 25% of its oil. The U.S. addiction to oil is linked with a host of human rights and environmental problems, including human rights abuses in countries such as Nigeria, Ecuador, Sudan, South Africa, and Indonesia. The U.S. oil addiction has prompted the U.S. government to cozy up to human rights, violating governments such as that of Saudi Arabia. It has pushed indigenous people off their land and destroyed hundreds of thousands of acres of rainforests, which are home to half the planet and animal species on the planet. It has fueled wars for oil, such as the war in Iraq, which has so far caused the deaths of more than 2,100 U.S. troops and an estimated 27,000 to 100,000 Iraqis. It has polluted cities, endangering the health of millions of people who live in high-ozone communities and leading to hundreds of thousands of cases of childhood asthma. And, by being a major contributor to global warming, has increased the likelihood of extreme weather events like Hurricane Katrina, which killed at least 1,289 people. Among automakers, Ford Motor Company is the worst. Every year since 1999, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has ranked Ford cars, trucks, and SUVs as having the worst overall fuel economy of any American automaker. Ford's current car and truck fleet has a lower average fuel efficiency than the original Ford Model T. Ford is also in last place when it comes to vehicle greenhouse gas emissions. According to a recent report by the Union of Concerned Scientists, Ford has the absolute worst heat-trapping gas emissions performance of all the big six automakers. In fact, if Ford were a country, it would be the 10th largest global warming polluter worldwide, behind Italy. Amazingly, despite the company's recent greenwashing PR campaign, its record has actually worsened. According to Ford's own sustainability report, between 2003 and 2004, the company's U.S. fleet-wide fuel economy decreased and its CO2 emissions went up. Ford is also lobbying to prevent the U.S. and state governments from improving the situation. The company has lobbied against lawmakers' efforts to increase fuel economy standards at the national level and is also involved in a lawsuit against California, House fuel economy standards.